When Daniel Price inherited his grandfather's 47-acre ranch in northern Colorado, he imagined a quiet piece of family history, rolling grassland, an old barn, maybe a broken fence or two. His grandfather, a stubborn and private rancher, had lived there for nearly 5 decades before passing away. Daniel assumed the land was untouched, forgotten by the world just as his grandfather had preferred. But the moment he turned off the highway and followed the dirt road leading to the property, something felt wrong. The quiet prairie had been replaced by the roar of machinery. Dust clouds rose into the sky. And then he saw it. Cranes. Bulldozers. Construction crews. Rows and rows of identical luxury homes stretched across the land where Daniel expected to see nothing but open fields. Newly paved roads led into the development, with fresh street signs reading Aspen Loop and Pine Hollow Drive. A massive blue banner flapped in the wind. Pine Ridge Estates, luxury living from $850,000. Daniel stepped out of his truck, stunned. He approached a worker and asked what was happening. New subdivision, the man said, barely looking up. 96 homes. HOAs already forming. Phase 1 is almost sold out. Who owns the land? Daniel asked. Pine Ridge Development Corp., the worker replied confidently. They bought it years ago. But Daniel knew that wasn't possible. His grandfather had never sold an inch of land, not even when oil companies came knocking decades earlier. Confused, he went straight to the county records office. There, he saw neatly documented digital files showing that the development company indeed had ownership. Notarized paperwork. Survey maps. Tax records. Everything looked official. Everything looked legitimate. But Daniel remembered something. His grandfather kept every important document. Not in filing cabinets, but in old ledgers, handwritten journals he guarded more fiercely than money. Daniel returned to the ranch house abandoned and dusty. By the time Daniel Price returned to the county courthouse months later, Pine Ridge Estates was complete. 96 luxury homes stood neatly in rows across his land. Driveways were poured. Streetlights glowed at night. Buyers were preparing to close their contracts, excited to move into what developers proudly called Colorado's most exclusive new community. Daniel watched all this unfold in silence. He watched families tour the model homes. He watched real estate agents brag about long-term land rights. He watched the HOA board elect its first president even though none of them actually owned the land beneath their houses. And Daniel waited. When the final sale closed and the developers held their celebration party, Daniel walked into the county courthouse carrying a single manila folder. No lawyers. No entourage. Just the documents his grandfather left behind. Inside the courtroom, the developers appeared relaxed, chatting confidently with their legal team. They didn't expect a challenge after all, the county records showed them as lawful owners. They believed the paperwork was airtight. They didn't know about the handwritten deed. When the clerk called Daniel's case, he stepped forward and placed the folder on the judge's bench. He pulled out the original 1963 handwritten deed, bearing 2 witness signatures. 47 years of tax receipts, all in his grandfather's name. A notarized letter from the retired surveyor who mapped the land in the 1960s. An affidavit from Daniel confirming continuous family ownership. The judge examined the documents carefully. For several minutes, the room was silent except for the rustling of papers. Then, with a heavy sigh, the judge asked the developer's lawyers one question. Do you have any document that predates this deed? They did not. Their ownership began in 2016. Over 50 years later. A subtle panic began to spread across the developer's table. Their lawyers whispered urgently, flipping through binders, "Sir,